Your cartilage is dissolving right now, not quickly but quietly. Every decade after 40, synovial fluid gets thicker and slower. The cartilage in your knees, hips, and shoulders stops receiving the nutrients it needs to maintain itself. Doctors call the end result osteoarthritis. You feel it as stiffness when you get out of bed, pain when you descend stairs, and that grinding sensation when you turn your head. 37% of Americans over 65 have severe arthritis. Most of them were told this is just what aging looks like. Watch this man, he's 78 years old. He's descending 400 stone steps at Drepung Monastery, the largest monastery in the world, carrying 40 elebidas of firewood. No handrail, no rest, not a single grimace. An orthopedic team examined 11 monks at this monastery, average age 71, average condition of their knee cartilage, equivalent to a 45-year-old Westerner. In a population where 37% of Americans that age have severe arthritis, none of the monks had a diagnosis of severe osteoarthritis. None. The monks weren't given anything special. No supplements, no injections, no surgery. What they had was a 1,500-year-old movement practice called kumnai, done every single morning before breakfast. And it works because of something your doctor almost certainly never told you about how your joints actually stay alive. Pause for a second. Make a tight fist right now. Hold it for 5 full seconds, then open your hand completely. Count how many seconds it takes before every single finger is fully straight. More than 3 seconds? Write that number down. In monks who practice daily, this takes under 1 second. That gap is synovial fluid viscosity. That is the biological gap between the joint that wears out and the joint that doesn't. We're coming back to this number at 30 days. Your cartilage has no blood supply, none. Unlike muscle or bone, cartilage is avascular. It has no direct blood vessels feeding it nutrients. It survives entirely through diffusion. The synovial fluid inside your joint pushes in and out like a sponge with every movement you make, delivering oxygen, glucose, and lubricating proteins to the cartilage surface. When you stop moving, or when you only move fast and hard, the fluid stagnates. The cartilage gets progressively less of what it needs. It starts to thin. It starts to crack. That is not aging. That is a mechanics problem. And mechanics problems have mechanical solutions. The monks at Drepung figured this out over 50 or 100 years. We are only now measuring why it works. Here's what the practice actually looks like. Before the sun rises, before any food, the monks perform 45 to 90 minutes of what they call kumnai, a Tibetan system of 116 slow movement exercises documented by Dr. Tarthang Tulku from the Nyingma lineage. Each posture is held for 3 to 7 minutes, not 30 seconds like your physical therapist showed you. 3 to 7 minutes with full breath, synchronization, and cool pre-dawn air. The key word is slow. Slower than anything you've probably done intentionally in the last decade. Here is the mechanism, and this is the part that changes everything. Slow movement, not intense exercise, not static stretching held briefly. Slow, deliberate movement with breath is what triggers the production of a protein called lubricin. Lubricin is the biological substance that reduces friction inside your joint and signals the body to keep producing synovial fluid. It is the cartilage's primary protective mechanism. A 2022 study from Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience measured this directly. 68 adults aged 60 to 78. 12 weeks of slow joint movement intervention. Lubricin production increased 34% compared to the resting control group. Not from supplements, not from surgery, from slow movement performed consistently. Think of your joint like a sponge left in a dry cupboard. If you pick it up and squeeze it fast and hard, you get some fluid exchange, but the center stays compressed. If you squeeze it slowly, rhythmically, you get full saturation. Every part of the sponge contacts fresh fluid. Your joint behaves the same way. Fast movement compresses and releases too quickly. Slow movement allows full diffusion. The conventional approach gets this backwards in 2 specific ways. First, the supplement industry, glucosamine and chondroitin, $2.5 billion per year in the US alone. The NIH ran a trial, 1,183 patients, no significant benefit over placebo in moderate to severe osteoarthritis. The monks spend 0 on supplements. Second, cortisone injections. A 2017 study from Tufts University followed 140 patients receiving injections every 12 weeks for 2 years. Cartilage loss in the cortisone group, 1.2 millimeter. In the placebo group, 0.6 millimeter. The treatment doubled the rate of destruction. You are not managing an irreversible condition. You have a joint that has been given the wrong input. Fast movement, chemical suppression, and sedentary periods that let synovial fluid stagnate. If joint pain or stiffness has gotten worse despite doing what you were told to do, the stretches, the anti-inflammatories, the rest, that's not your body failing. That's the wrong protocol running consistently. The movement practice you're going to learn today has 3 layers. Each one addresses a different joint system. The first activates synovial fluid production in the spine and neck. The second restores hip and shoulder mobility. The third builds the structural capacity to hold those gains permanently. You cannot skip straight to the third. Without the first 2, the third is just loading a joint that isn't lubricated enough to handle it. Stand up. Cross your arms over your chest. Without moving your hips, rotate your upper body to the right as far as you can. Hold for 2 seconds. Now rotate left. Note where each side stops. If you cannot see the wall directly behind you on both sides, you have lost significant thoracic rotation. A monk active at 70 rotates nearly as far as he did at 40. The thoracic spine loses up to 31% of its rotational range between ages 40 and 70. That number is not fixed. A 2024 study following 344 adults aged 25 to 80 found that stretching 4 times per week reversed up to 65% of that lost range within 12 weeks. Write down which side was tighter. That is test 2. The first layer of this practice targets the joints that stagnate first: the cervical spine, the shoulder capsule, and the hip socket. These 3 connect directly to the body's primary movement chains, and when they freeze, everything below and above pays the price. The first movement is slow cervical rotation. Stand or sit. Either position works, and if you have any balance concerns, do this seated with back support. Slowly rotate your head to the right. Take 4 full seconds to complete the turn. This is slower than it sounds. At the end of your range, pause for 2 seconds, then return to center and rotate left. Same 4 seconds. As you turn, inhale through the nose. As you return to center, exhale through the nose. You are looking for a pulling sensation along the side of the neck, the sternocleidomastoid, and the upper trapezius. Not a sharp pain, a stretch. If you feel sharpness, you have gone past your range. Pull back 15 degrees and try again. 8 rotations per side. This takes 2 full minutes. The mistake that eliminates almost all of the benefit: moving too fast. If you complete 1 full rotation in under 6 seconds, the lubricant effect drops significantly. The joint gets compressed and released too quickly for full diffusion to occur. Slow until it almost feels uncomfortable. That discomfort is a signal that the mechanism is active. If you feel dizziness during this movement, reduce your arc to 30 to quarter and do it seated with back support. If dizziness persists beyond the first 2 sessions, skip this movement entirely and consult your physician before continuing. The second movement is hip mandala circles. Stand with feet at hip width. Place both hands on the bony points at the front of your pelvis, the anterior superior iliac spines. Draw slow, large circles with your hips. Think of a hula hoop in slow motion. The diameter should be as wide as you can make it while keeping your shoulders relatively still. 8 circles clockwise, then 8 counterclockwise. 2 full minutes. What you should feel: a warming sensation building inside the hip joint itself. Not in the outer glute, not in the lower back, deep in the socket. That warmth is the synovial fluid beginning to circulate. If you feel it primarily in your lower back, you are initiating the movement from the lumbar spine instead of the hip socket. Reset. Narrow the circle until you feel the movement originating from inside the hip, then gradually widen it. This is where the villain, synovial stagnation, gets its first direct counterattack. The hip socket is the largest ball and socket joint in the body and one of the first to develop thick, poorly circulating synovial fluid in sedentary adults. The slow circular motion pulls the femoral head through the full arc of the socket, ensuring contact between the cartilage surface and fresh synovial fluid at every point. The third movement is the wall wing shoulder opening. Stand sideways to a wall. Place your palm flat against the surface at shoulder height. Arm extended but not locked. Soft elbow. Now slowly rotate your entire body away from the wall. Your chest opens. Your palm stays in contact with the wall through the full movement. Hold for 30 seconds, 3 slow nasal breaths. Then switch sides. 3 repetitions per shoulder, 2 full minutes total. What you should feel is a deep stretch across the front of the shoulder and into the pectoral. If you only feel it in the back of the shoulder, you have rotated too far. Come back 15 degrees. The front of the shoulder, the anterior capsule, is chronically shortened in men who spend time seated. This movement is the first time many men over 60 have ever directly stretched that tissue with their full body weight in a stable external contact point. The shoulder joint loses 18% of its range of motion between ages 40 and 70. The wall wing restores that range by targeting the anterior capsule specifically. Not the muscles, the joint capsule itself. 2 different tissues, 2 different timelines. The muscle responds in days. The capsule responds over weeks. That is why consistency here is more important than intensity. The first layer alone, cervical rotation, hip circles, wall wing, takes 6 minutes. After your first session, your joints will feel warmer than usual. That warmth is not inflammation, it is circulation. Any actual soreness arrives on day 2 or day 3 and should stay below a 3 out of 10 on a pain scale. If it goes higher, you move too fast. By day 7, morning stiffness, that first 15 to 20 minutes after waking, when your joints feel like rusted metal, begins to shrink. Not disappear, shrink. It drops to under 5 minutes for most men in the first week. That is the first signal that the synovial fluid mechanism is running. The first layer activates the fluid, but it does not build the capacity to keep that fluid circulating under any real load. That requires the second layer. And this is where most conventional stretching programs stop too early. The fourth movement is seated spinal elongation. Sit at the edge of a chair, not push back against it, at the edge. Feet flat on the floor, hip width apart. On the inhale, imagine someone has attached a thread to the very top of your skull and is pulling it toward the ceiling. Your spine lengthens upward. On the exhale, tilt your pelvis slightly forward. Your lower back develops a gentle inward curve. You are not rounding your back. You are extending it, creating length from the tailbone to the base of the skull. Hold that length for the entire exhale. 10 slow breaths. This takes about 2 minutes. The sensation you want is decompression, a lengthening feeling, as if the vertebrae are being separated gently from the tailbone upward. If you feel compression in the lower back, you are collapsing forward. Reset. Sit taller before you tilt the pelvis. The tilt comes after the length, not before. This movement addresses the intervertebral discs, the cartilage pads between each vertebra. They have the same avascular property as joint cartilage and rely on the same diffusion mechanism. Sustained axial elongation with breath creates a rhythmic pressure change in the disc that pumps fluid in and out. 30 years of sedentary posture collapses that mechanism. 10 slow breaths in elongation begins to restore it. The fifth movement is knee rotation circles. Sit back in the chair now. Place both hands gently on top of your knees. Not gripping, just resting. Draw slow circles with both knees simultaneously. Inward 8 circles, outward 8 circles. At the end of each circle, extend the leg fully. Straighten the knee completely before beginning the next circle. Cracking or popping during this movement is normal in the first week and will reduce as the synovial fluid redistributes. No pain with the cracking? Continue. Pain with the cracking means stop. The error men make here is using their hands to push or guide the knees through the circle. Your hands are resting on the knees. They do not push. They do not pull. The movement comes from the joint itself. If you use your hands to force the movement, you are not activating the lubricant response. You are compressing the joint from outside rather than moving it from within. Now this is where synovial stagnation returns with a new dimension. The knee is the joint most likely to have cartilage that has already been thinning for years without symptoms. The first symptoms of knee cartilage degradation often don't appear until 30 to 40% of the cartilage is already gone. By the time you feel it consistently, the process has been running silently for a decade. The rotation circles are not just maintenance. For many men, they are late intervention, but they still work. The cartilage that remains responds to lubrication. The question is whether you start now or wait until there is less of it. The sixth movement is ankle circles and plantar flexion. Still seated, extend one leg. Draw 10 slow circles with your foot in each direction, then flex and extend your foot fully. Point the toes away from you as far as they go. Then pull them back toward your shin as hard as you can. 15 repetitions per foot. This one looks too simple to matter. It is not simple. The ankle and foot contain 33 joints. Men over 60 have chronically restricted circulation to the distal lower extremity. Reduced blood flow, reduced synovial fluid circulation, reduced proprioception. The ankle circles activate the entire lower joint chain and drive circulation up through the knee and into the hip. Skip this movement, and the hip and knee work you just did is less effective. The chain needs both ends active. After your first full session, all 6 movements, sit quietly for 60 seconds before standing. Notice the warmth distributed through your joints. Notice whether the cervical rotation you started with feels different now. For most men, the second rotation of the day, done mentally or actually, feels more available than the first. That change happened in 6 minutes. Stop for a moment. I need to tell you about a man named Gary Ellison. Gary was 64 years old, a structural engineer from Phoenix, Arizona. Spent 35 years designing buildings. Good at solving complex load-bearing problems professionally. Could calculate the stress tolerance of a steel beam to the 3rd decimal. Could not figure out why his own knees were failing him. By 62, he had gotten 3 cortisone injections. Each one worked for about 8 weeks. Then the pain came back worse. His orthopedic surgeon had already scheduled a consultation for partial knee replacement. Gary was taking 800 milligrams of ibuprofen twice a day, every day, had been for 3 years. His gastroenterologist told him his stomach lining was showing early signs of NSAID-related damage. He was doing everything the medical system recommended. His joints were getting worse on a measurable schedule. What Gary didn't know, what nobody had told him, is that the ibuprofen was suppressing the pain signal while simultaneously blocking the prostaglandin pathways that regulate cartilage repair. He was chemically silencing the system his joints needed to communicate damage and begin recovery. The cortisone was accelerating cartilage loss while providing temporary relief. He was paying for his own joint destruction and calling it treatment. At 64, Gary could not descend a flight of stairs without holding the railing with both hands. He had stopped hiking. He had stopped playing with his grandchildren on the floor. He had started thinking about which rooms in his house he would need to reclassify as inaccessible. His joints were not degenerating because of age. They were degenerating because they had never been given the slow, diffusion-activating movement that cartilage requires to maintain itself. And they had been chemically suppressed while that starvation continued. That is what synovial stagnation does when it goes unaddressed. Not slowly, systematically. Now, everything I've walked you through today, the come-nigh practice, the 6 movements, the synovial mechanism, the specifics of how to execute each one, that is one part of a larger system. It is called the Western Monk Protocol. It is a 124-page guide. It covers the complete system, not just the joint practice, but the eating protocol that reduces systemic inflammation, the sleep system, the breathing techniques, the 90-day implementation plan with weekly progressions, the complete Kumnai sequence beyond these 6 movements, the Tibetan wall sitting practice for structural strength, and day-by-day printable checklists. It is a PDF. You download it instantly. Works on your phone, your tablet, your computer. If you are watching this on your TV right now, there is a QR code on screen. Scan it with your phone. You will have the full protocol in your hands in 60 seconds. If you are watching on your phone or computer, the link is in the description below this video. Now the 3rd layer. The first layer activated synovial fluid. The second layer restored range of motion under your own body weight. The 3rd layer is the one the monks never explicitly talk about because for them it is simply part of how they live. It is load-bearing capacity. A joint that can produce lubricant but cannot support weight will fail the moment real life demands it. The stairs, the grandchildren, the trail. Lubricant without strength is like oiling a door hinge on a door with a broken frame. The lubrication is real, but the structure cannot use it. The Tibetan wall sitting practice is the third layer. Stand with your back flat against a wall. Walk your feet forward 18 inches from the baseboard. Lower your body slowly, taking 4 seconds to descend until your knees are at 90 degrees. Your back stays flat against the wall. Your knees stay directly over your ankles, not in front of them. Your feet stay flat on the floor. Hold for 45 seconds. 3 slow nasal breaths. Then push back up to standing, taking 3 seconds to ascend. Rest 30 seconds, 3 sets. What you should feel is a deep burn in the quadriceps, specifically in the section just above the kneecap. Not in your lower back, not in your knee joint itself, in the quad. If you feel it in the knee joint, your feet are too far from the wall. Walk them in 2 inches and retry. The wall sit does something the first 2 layers cannot. It loads the knee joint under compression while the quadriceps contract to support the weight. This creates a mechanical stimulus that signals the body to maintain cartilage density in the areas under load. Cartilage, like bone, responds to mechanical stress by maintaining itself. Remove the stress and cartilage thins. Apply appropriate stress, not impact, controlled compression, and it maintains. A 20-25 study from JAMA Network Open followed 117 adults with confirmed knee osteoarthritis. The study compared slow movement and yoga protocols against strength training directly. The result? No significant difference in pain reduction. Slow movement, when it includes controlled loading, achieves equivalent outcomes to dedicated strength training for joint pain in adults over 60. The monks do not lift weights. They descend 400 stone steps carrying firewood. They perform hundreds of prostrations, full-body controlled lowering and rising movements every morning. The load is there. It is just distributed through functional movement rather than isolated exercise. Now you have the complete daily sequence. Write this down. Before breakfast, on an empty stomach, or at least 2 hours after eating, 6 minutes of Kumnai, the 6 movements in order. Then, beginning in week 3, add 3 sets of wall sits at the end. The total time? 12 minutes for the first 2 weeks, 18 minutes from week 3 onward. 6 movements in order every morning, minimum 5 days per week. 4 days per week gives you maintenance at best in the first 30 days. 3 days gives you nothing measurable. The monks practice daily because the cartilage cycle, the diffusion of nutrients in and waste products out, operates on a 24-hour rhythm. Skipping days means returning to stagnation. The complete daily sequence: cervical rotation, 8 each side, hip mandala circles, 8 each direction, wall wing shoulder opening, 3 repetitions each side, 30-second holds. Seated spinal elongation, 10 slow breaths. Knee rotation circles, 8 inward and 8 outward each knee with full extension. Ankle circles and plantar flexion, 10 circles each direction and 15 flexions per foot. Then wall sits, 3 sets of 45 seconds from week 3. 3 problems come up consistently in the first 2 to 4 weeks. Problem 1, sharp pain above a 4 out of 10 during any of the movements. The distinction here is critical. Distributed warmth and stretch is normal. A stabbing sensation is not. If you experience sharp pain above 4 out of 10, stop immediately. Ice the joint for 15 minutes. You are working with an actively inflamed joint, and movement during acute inflammation is counterproductive. Wait until pain drops to 2 out of 10 or lower, then restart with only movements 5 and 6, the knee circles and ankle work. Nothing proximal until the inflammation is resolved. Add movements 4, 3, 2, and 1 back in that order over the following week. Problem 2, no measurable change after 2 weeks. 2 causes almost every time. First, speed. You are moving too fast. Record yourself with your phone and watch the playback. If each cervical rotation completes in under 6 seconds, that is the problem. Slow every movement to twice what feels right. The lubricant response requires sustained, slow movement. It does not activate with quick repetitions. Second, frequency. If you are doing this 3 days per week, you are not doing it enough. 5 days minimum. The cartilage diffusion cycle cannot be rushed, but it also cannot be interrupted consistently and still produce results. Problem 3, cracking that gets louder and begins to hurt. This is not the normal redistribution of synovial fluid that produces harmless clicking in the first week. This is bone-on-bone contact with active inflammation. Do not push through this combination. Increased crepitation plus new pain requires medical assessment before you continue. This is the point where something structural may be happening that movement alone cannot address. Now, the honest timeline. Session 1, your joints will feel warmer than usual afterward. That is the circulation. Any soreness arrives on day 2 or 3 and stays below 3 out of 10. Day 7, redo the fist test. Make a tight fist. Hold 5 seconds. Open. How many seconds now before every finger is fully straight? For most men starting above 3 seconds, this drops to under 2 seconds by day 7. The synovial fluid in the small joints of the hand, one of the first places to show the effect, has already begun to thin. Write this number down next to your baseline. Weeks 2 and 3, specific movements that were difficult begin to become easier. Turning your head to check your blind spot while driving. Getting out of a car without using the door frame for leverage. Descending stairs without consciously calculating each step. These are not dramatic changes. They are functional changes, the kind that alter the texture of a day. Day 30, redo the thoracic rotation test. Stand, arms crossed, rotate right and then left. Compare to your baseline from today. Most men who execute the protocol at 5 days per week add 15 to 25 degrees of rotation in 30 days. That is measurable with a piece of tape on a wall. It is also visible in your movement. People notice it before you do. Months 2 and 3, if you have added the wall sits at week 3 and built to 3 sets consistently, you are now building the structural capacity that holds these gains permanently. The joint can produce lubricant, the range of motion is restored. The quadriceps are now strong enough to protect the knee under load. These 3 things together, fluid, range, strength, are what the monk at Drepung has maintained for 40 years of daily practice. Be honest with yourself about the timeline. Pain reduction begins in week 1 for most men. Range of motion improves measurably in 30 days. Structural changes take 90 days. Anyone who promises you full joint restoration in 2 weeks is selling something. Here is the system in plain language. 6 movements, 12 minutes before breakfast, 5 days per week. Cervical rotation to activate the neck and upper spine. Hip circles to circulate the largest ball and socket joint. Wall wing to open the shoulder capsule. Spinal elongation to feed the intervertebral discs. Knee circles to lubricate the most commonly damaged joint. Ankle circles to activate the distal chain. From week 3, 3 sets of wall sits to build the structural strength that keeps the lubrication working under load. Tonight, do the fist test. Write down the number. Tomorrow morning, do the full 6 movements before you eat anything. Slow. 4 seconds per cervical rotation. Large circles at the hip, 30-second holds at the shoulder, 10 full breaths in spinal elongation, 8 full circles at the knee with complete extension at the end of each. 15 plantar flexions per foot. One warning, and I mean this specifically, if you have an active joint replacement or a surgical site less than 6 months old, begin with only movements 5 and 6, the knee circles and ankle work, for the first 2 weeks. Do not load a healing joint capsule with the rotational stress of movements 1 through 4. That monk at Drepung, descending 400 steps with 40 lb on his back at 78. He was not born with special cartilage. He was not genetically protected. He maintained his joints. Every single morning before the sun was fully up on a cold stone floor, for decades, you have 12 minutes. If this is the kind of specific practical information you want, no filler, no false promises, just the mechanism and the protocol, subscribe. Leave a comment below with the joint that gives you the most trouble right now. I read every single one, and if you have a father, an uncle, a friend over 60 who has been told their joint pain is just something to manage from here on out, share this with them. They deserve to know there is a mechanism, not just a medication. The joint learns to lubricate itself. It just needs to be asked. If this story changes the way you look at the wear and tear of aging, please subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the biological truths that have been hidden by modern convenience. Plant the seeds for your future mobility. The next treasure of health will be revealed soon.